There was much controversy in World War One about the execution of Canadian soldiers for desertion and other crimes, but this case drew a lot more attention because he was the highest ranked officer to be executed in the course of his, not say duties, but his non-duties. Today we're talking about the curious case of William Alexander. Now, William Alexander, born 18 September 1880, was executed in Houdain, France, October 18th, 1917, at age 37. His execution by firing squad followed a charge of desertion. Now, he had served with the 10th Battalion CAF in France during the First War. Now, like I said, he was he was one of 25 Canadian soldiers executed during the course of the campaign. Now, the early life of Alexander is very obscure, but we do know he served for 8 years in the King's Royal Rifle Corps before emigrating to Canada. Now, soon after, when he came to Canada, he found a job in Winnipeg with the Auto Tire and Vulcanization Company, which in 1914 sent him to establish a branch in Calgary. At the outbreak of the war in August, he hastened to enlist in 103rd Regiment, of course the Calgary Rifles, and on September 24th at Valcartier, Quebec, he was attested in the 10th Infantry Battalion of the Canadian Expeditionary Force. As an old soldier, he was immediately appointed Colour Sergeant for one of the battalion's 8 companies, though he reverted to Sergeant when the unit was reorganized into 4 companies. Now, he eventually went overseas with the 10th and shared in its battles, from 2nd Ypres to Vimy Ridge, which my great-grandfather Fred Slegger served in. In November 1915, he was appointed Acting Company Sergeant Major, but he reverted to Sergeant at his own request 2 months later. Now, the Fighting 10th, as it was called, had a particularly harsh time in June 1916 during the Canadian struggle to regain Mount Sorel in Belgium, entering the line 3 times after absorbing heavy losses. Later, officers will remember that Alexander had done well. His reward was promotion to Company Quartermaster Sergeant, the second senior NCO in the company. Henceforth, however, much of his life was spent in the rear of the line. On October 28th, after the battalion had withdrawn from the Somme in France, he began his first leave in England. He returned, unfortunately infected with syphilis, and did not rejoin the tent until April 7, 17, just before it shared the attack on Vimy Ridge. Once again, severe casualties led to promotion to Acting Company Sergeant Major on the 21st. 3 days later, he was thrown from his ration limber and injured his left knee. I do not consider that he was to blame, wrote his commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Mowat Ormond. After hospitalization and convalescence, he returned to his unit on August 10th. At dawn, 5 days later, the 10th went over the top in the assault on Hill 70 and took its objective at high cost. On the 16th, the battalion was ordered to pass over the hill and take the German positions in the chalk quarry. It was a desperate struggle, and by its end, the 10th had won more medals than any other Canadian battalion earned in a single battle during World War I. Now, amidst so much heroism, there were 2 sorry tales. An officer new to the unit had a panic in the assault on the quarry and almost cost the battalion its success. And Alexander, assigned to lead a platoon in support of this assault, had vanished by 0 hour, leaving it to a corporal to take his men forward. He was later found at Les Bribes behind the line. He claimed that he had blown over by a shell, but he bore no marks. He had not, he admitted, reported the matter. He was charged with desertion on active service and brought before a field general court-martial on September 26th. An obvious defense plea would have been for the reduced charge of absence without leave. If one was entered, the court was not moved. Within a day, it had heard the evidence, rendered a verdict, and pronounced the designated sentence: death. Alexander's fate depended on the Commander-in-Chief of the British Expeditionary Force, Sir Douglas Haig, a tough nut on the best days, who confirmed the sentence on October 15th. Haig must have been influenced by the views of the officer who knew the accused best, Lieutenant Colonel Ormond, who considered Alexander's work, accepted at Mont Sorel, indifferent. It is my opinion that he deliberately endeavored to avoid the particular service in a charge against him. Alexander learned of Haig's decision on the night of October 17th. Despite the efforts of Canon Frederick George Scott, the senior chaplain of 1st Canadian Division, the sentence was carried out at 5:57 the next morning on a foggy hillside near Houdan by a firing squad drawn from the 2nd Canadian Infantry Brigade. Now, of the 25 Canadians executed during World War I, he was the most senior and longest serving. His fate has fueled intermittent controversy over the use of the death penalty in World War I. I can hardly believe that for the first offense of desertion, that they were justified in passing that sentence, wrote his elder brother Archibald M. Alexander, when he finally learned the truth about how Bill had died. May the Lord have mercy on the man who judged him if he was wrong. Now, information on this case is reprinted with permission from an article by Desmond Morton on the biography.ca site. In my basic opinion, unlike the Pringle case, where Pringle was involved in various criminal activities in Second World War, which led to his execution, I think basically Alexander was suffering either from shell shock or some type of lack of heroism in assigned situations. Did he deserve to be executed? No. He had fought in very major battles, would not say distinction, but being disappeared. But the fact is, he got a reputation as somebody that couldn't fulfill the assignment. But was that enough to murder somebody? I don't know. It's all in perspective. It was a different time of World War I. People were getting fragged as well, like superior officers and stuff like that. So this is the latest in our execution series on Canadians through various periods when we had a death penalty. We are reprinting this just as a public service, not an exploitation of the cases. Basically, it's part of our history, should be discussed and be learned from, because to know where you're going as a country, you got to know where you came from. Have a good day. Bye.